The invitation to peace. The war between humanity and the Galactic Alliance had raged for 5 long years across 17 star systems. Then, without warning, the aliens stopped firing. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the battlecruiser UES Phoenix, staring at tactical displays that showed no enemy movement for the first time in months. The sudden silence felt more dangerous than the constant barrage of plasma fire they had grown accustomed to. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Colonel James Park, approached with a datapad in hand. His weathered face showed the same suspicion she felt in her bones. "Commander, we have received a transmission from the Alliance High Council. They are requesting a ceasefire and offering terms for a permanent peace treaty." Elena took the pad and read through the message twice. The Galactic Alliance, a coalition of 6 advanced alien species that had deemed humanity too aggressive for the cosmic community, was suddenly offering peace. The term seemed almost generous. Recognition of human colonial rights, trade agreements, even a seat on the Galactic Council. But there was one requirement that made her jaw clench. The treaty signing must occur on neutral station Omega-7, and the human delegation must arrive with minimal escort and no offensive weapons as a gesture of good faith. She handed the pad back to Park. "What do you think, Colonel?" Park didn't hesitate. "It stinks worse than an Altarian swamp, Commander. After 5 years of trying to exterminate us, they suddenly want to make friends. And they want us defenseless while we do it." Elena nodded slowly. The Alliance had underestimated humanity from the beginning. They saw humans as primitive warmongers who had barely achieved faster-than-light travel. They didn't understand that humans had survived on a death world, fighting everything from predators to plagues to each other for millennia. Every human was descended from winners, survivors who had faced impossible odds and prevailed. She activated the quantum communicator to Earth Command. Within an hour, she was in a secure conference with Admiral Chen, General Roberts, and the rest of the Joint Chiefs. The holographic projections made it seem like they were all in the same room, though they were scattered across human space. Admiral Chen spoke first. "We have analyzed their proposal. Our intelligence suggests this could be legitimate, but the probability of deception is approximately 78%. General Roberts, a man who had fought in 3 different wars before this one, leaned forward. "Even if it is a trap, we cannot ignore it. Our people are war-weary. If we refuse a peace offer without trying, we lose public support." Elena had been thinking the same thing. "Then we go, but we go prepared. The treaty says no offensive weapons. It says nothing about defensive systems, tools, or other equipment." Admiral Chen smiled coldly. "I like how you think, Commander. You will lead the delegation. Take 50 of your best people. Make sure they understand they might not come back." Over the next 2 weeks, Elena and her team prepared for what might be a one-way mission. The selection process was careful. She chose people who were not just soldiers but engineers, chemists, doctors, and technicians. Each person selected had survived multiple combat situations and demonstrated exceptional ability to improvise under pressure. Master Sergeant Lisa Wong was her first choice. The woman had once held off an entire Krellian assault squad with nothing but mining charges and a maintenance robot she had reprogrammed. Dr. Marcus Thompson came next, a combat medic who had developed 17 different ways to turn medical equipment into weapons during the siege of New Mumbai Station. The real preparation happened in secret. While publicly they packed dress uniforms and diplomatic gifts, privately they were modifying everything they could. Ceremonial swords had monomolecular edges hidden beneath decorative sheaths. Formal jackets were lined with a spray-on polymer that could harden into armor in seconds. Even their shoes contained miniature explosive charges in the heels. The diplomatic gifts were masterpieces of hidden purpose. A crystal sculpture from Earth contained components that could be assembled into a directed energy weapon. Cases of Earth wine had bottles that could be converted into incendiary devices. A collection of historical books had pages treated with chemicals that became toxic when exposed to certain wavelengths of light. But the real genius was in what they did to their transport ship. The diplomatic vessel Harmony. On the surface, it appeared to be a standard diplomatic courier, unarmed as per the treaty requirements. What the Alliance didn't know was that the entire cargo bay had been converted into a molecular fabrication facility. Given raw materials and power, it could manufacture weapons, explosives, even small vehicles within hours. Chief Engineer Rodriguez had outdone himself with the modifications. The ship's communication array could be reconfigured into a directed EMP weapon. The navigation shields could be overcharged to create a localized plasma field. Even the waste processing system had been modified to produce chemical weapons if needed. 3 weeks after receiving the invitation, the Harmony departed for Omega-7 Station. The journey took 4 days through hyperspace. Elena spent the time drilling her team on contingency plans. They had 17 different response scenarios depending on how the trap might spring. Each person knew their role in each scenario. As they dropped out of hyperspace near Omega-7, Elena felt her suspicions confirmed. The station was massive, a rotating cylinder 20 kilometers long and 5 kilometers in diameter. It was supposed to be neutral territory, but her sensors detected over 300 Alliance warships hidden among the nearby asteroids and debris fields. Park studied the readings. They're running silent, but our new detection grid can still spot them. Definitely an ambush fleet. Elena wasn't surprised. How long would it take them to converge on the station if things go bad? 6 minutes, maybe less if they're already at combat readiness. She turned to her team. Remember, we're diplomats until proven otherwise. But the moment this goes sideways, we show them why humanity has never lost a last stand. The docking procedure was deliberately slow and thorough. Alliance security forces scanned their ship multiple times looking for weapons. They found none, at least nothing they recognized as weapons. The gifts were cleared as cultural artifacts. The ceremonial items were dismissed as primitive human traditions. As they walked through the station's corridors, Elena memorized every detail. The layout, the security positions, the emergency systems, the structural weak points. Her team was doing the same, their trained eyes cataloging everything that could be used to their advantage. The main ceremony hall was a trap waiting to spring. Elena spotted at least 40 hidden weapon emplacements, force field generators at every entrance, and what looked like knockout gas dispensers in the ventilation system. The Alliance delegates were already present, arranged in a semicircle that would give them perfect firing positions. The Krellians sat in the center, their insectoid forms twitching with barely contained aggression. These were the Alliance's shock troops, 7 feet tall with natural armor plating and forearms capable of wielding multiple weapons simultaneously. To their left were the Volthari, energy beings who could generate devastating electrical attacks with their bodies alone. The Nexari, telepathic creatures who could confuse and disorient enemies, occupied the right flank. Behind them stood representatives from the Zorathi Empire, silicon-based lifeforms nearly impossible to kill with conventional weapons. The Altarians, aquatic beings in powered suits that doubled as weapons platforms, gurgled in their tanks along the walls. Finally, the Seraphim, the Alliance's leaders, hovered near the ceiling on anti-gravity platforms, their perfect humanoid forms hiding their complete lack of empathy for other species. Ambassador Zerion of the Seraphim descended to address them. His voice was melodious, designed to put other species at ease, but Elena heard the condescension beneath it. Welcome, humans. Today we end this unfortunate conflict and bring peace to the galaxy. Elena stepped forward, playing her role. We come in good faith, Ambassador. Humanity desires peace as much as any species. Zerion's perfect features formed what might have been a smile. Excellent. Then let us proceed with the ceremony. As they moved toward the treaty table, Elena caught Wang's eye. The sergeant tapped her wrist twice, a prearranged signal. She had spotted the same thing Elena had. The energy readings were spiking throughout the station. The Alliance was powering up their weapons. The trap would spring soon, probably the moment the humans were all in the center of the room, surrounded and helpless. The spring of the trap, the treaty table, was a masterpiece of psychological manipulation, positioned in the exact center of the hall where the human delegation would be completely surrounded. Ambassador Zerion gestured gracefully toward the ornate documents laid out on its surface. The treaty that will herald a new age of cooperation between our peoples. Elena walked forward slowly, her team forming a loose circle around her. To the aliens, it probably looked like a protective formation. In reality, each human had positioned themselves for maximum effectiveness when the violence started. Dr. Thompson stood near the gift table, ready to activate the hidden weapons. Sergeant Wang had drifted toward a structural support column that her trained eye had identified as load-bearing. As Elena reached for the ceremonial pen, she heard the almost inaudible hum of energy shields activating. The trap was about to spring. She picked up the pen slowly, examining it as if admiring the craftsmanship. In reality, she was giving her team the final moments they needed to prepare. "This is beautiful workmanship," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It reminds me of an old Earth saying." She paused, meeting Zerion's eyes. "The pen is mightier than the sword, but humans always carry both." Confusion flickered across Zerion's perfect features for just a moment. Then Elena clicked the pen. It wasn't really a pen. Rodriguez had spent 3 days turning it into a localized EMP device. The pulse was small, but enough to disrupt the nearest force field generators for exactly 4 seconds. 4 seconds was all humanity needed. The hall erupted into chaos. Wong slapped the explosive charge from her shoe heel onto the support column and dove aside. Thompson yanked 2 bottles of wine from the gift collection, smashed them together, and threw the resulting incendiary mixture at the Volthari delegation. The chemicals in the wine reacted violently with the energy being's natural electromagnetic fields, causing them to shriek and retreat. Energy barriers slammed down around the room, but not before 3 of Elena's people had made it to the walls. They pulled ceremonial swords from their sheaths, revealing the monomolecular blades beneath, and began cutting through power conduits. Lights flickered and died in sections of the hall. Zerion's voice boomed through the chaos. "You fool, you've doomed your entire species. The fleet will destroy you all." Elena rolled behind the treaty table as plasma fire erupted from the hidden weapon emplacements. The table, made from dense alien alloys, provided temporary cover. She pulled the heel from her other shoe, a small plasma charge, and threw it at the nearest Krellian warrior who was advancing on her position. The charge detonated against its natural armor, not enough to kill but sufficient to stagger the creature. Park was already there, having assembled the crystal sculpture into a directed energy weapon. The beam caught the Krellian in its compound eyes, blinding it temporarily. Meanwhile, the Harmony was not sitting idle. The moment the fighting started, the skeleton crew left aboard began their part of the plan. The fabrication facility roared to life, using the ship's own hull material to create weapons and equipment. The communication array reconfigured into an EMP weapon and fired, knocking out 1/3 of the station's systems. Back in the ceremony hall, the battle had become a desperate melee. The Zorathi were advancing slowly but steadily, their silicon bodies shrugging off most attacks. Thompson had discovered that the medical alcohol in his kit, when combined with the chemicals from the treated book pages, created an acid strong enough to damage even their tough hides. The Nexari tried to use their telepathic abilities to confuse the humans, but Elena had prepared for this. Each member of her team had undergone intensive mental conditioning, learning to compartmentalize their thoughts and operate on trained instinct when psychic interference was detected. The Nexari found their powers sliding off disciplined human minds like water off steel. The Altarians and their tanks were causing the most problems, their suits' weapons laying down suppressing fire. Wong had a solution for that. She had reached the environmental controls and reversed the humidity systems. The hall began to fill with vapor, condensation forming on everything. The Altarian suits, designed for aquatic environments, began to malfunction as their systems tried to process air that was suddenly too humid, even for them. But the real surprise came from above. The Seraphim, confident in their superiority, had descended to join the battle directly. They didn't know that Park had spent the entire diplomatic reception analyzing their anti-gravity platforms. As they swooped down to attack, he activated the modified wine bottle he'd been saving. It wasn't really wine anymore. Rodriguez had turned it into a localized gravity disruptor, using components from the ship's artificial gravity systems. The Seraphim suddenly found their platforms going haywire, sending them crashing into walls and each other. Elena saw her chance. She sprinted across the chaotic battlefield, dodging plasma fire and leaping over fallen aliens. She reached the main control panel for the hall's systems, just as a Krellian warrior caught up to her. The creature raised all 4 arms, each holding a weapon. She smiled grimly and pressed her hand against the panel. The polymer lining in her jacket, which she had deliberately scratched to expose it to air, had been slowly hardening over the past 5 minutes. As the Krellian fired, the jacket became rigid armor, deflecting the shots long enough for her to input the override codes Thompson had extracted from the station's medical systems during their arrival scans. The hall's emergency systems activated, but not as the Alliance intended. Elena had reversed the protocols, Instead of knockout gas, pure oxygen flooded the chamber. The incendiary devices her team had been using suddenly became 10 times more effective. The Volthari, beings of pure energy, found themselves unable to maintain cohesion in the oxygen-rich environment and retreated to their containment suits. Outside, the Alliance fleet was moving to converge on the station, but they were in for a surprise. The Harmony had not come alone. As the Alliance ships emerged from their hiding spots, they detected massive energy signatures appearing all around them. 30 human warships dropped out of hyperspace, having been waiting just outside sensor range. Admiral Chen's voice boomed across all frequencies. "Attention, Alliance fleet. We came to your peace treaty in good faith, but we're not idiots. Stand down or be destroyed." Back in the ceremony hall, the battle was winding down. The Alliance delegates, shocked by the ferocity and ingenuity of the supposedly unarmed humans, had retreated to defensive positions. Several were injured, though Elena had made sure none were killed. That was important for what came next. She stood in the center of the ruined hall, her formal jacket scarred by plasma fire but still standing. Around her, her team had secured the space, using improvised weapons and converted equipment to hold positions that should have been impossible to take without proper arms. Ambassador Zarion, one of his perfect wings bent at an unnatural angle, stared at her in disbelief. "How, you were unarmed?" "We scanned everything." Elena walked over to the treaty table, which had somehow survived the battle mostly intact. She picked up the actual treaty document and held it up. "You're right. We brought no offensive weapons. Everything we used was defensive equipment, tools, or cultural items. Your own treaty terms, Ambassador." She set the document back down and pulled out a pen. A real one this time. "Here's what's going to happen. We're going to sign this treaty, but with some modifications. Humanity gets full membership in the Galactic Council, not observer status. Our territory is recognized as sovereign, with a 50 light-year buffer zone. And most importantly, you're going to acknowledge that humanity earned its place through strength, not your charity." Zarion's perfect features contorted in rage. "You dare dictate terms? Our fleet will destroy you." "No, they won't." Elena activated her communicator and Admiral Chen's image appeared as a hologram. "Admiral, status report?" Chen smiled coldly. "All Alliance vessels have been targeted and locked. We have boarding parties ready to deploy. The station is surrounded. Your call, Commander." Elena turned back to Zarion. "You made 2 mistakes, Ambassador. First, you thought that because we use weapons, we need them to be dangerous. Humans have been killing each other with rocks and sticks for millennia. Everything is a weapon if you know how to use it." She paused, letting that sink in. "And second, you thought this was a trap for us. It was actually a trap for you. We knew you'd try something like this, so we let you think you were clever. We brought no offensive weapons just as you demanded. But we brought everything else. Tools, equipment, defensive systems, and most importantly, human ingenuity." The defeated Alliance delegates looked at each other, seeing their situation clearly for the first time. They were surrounded, outmaneuvered, and facing a species that had just defeated them with wine bottles and ceremonial swords. General Kavath of the Krellians, nursing a wounded arm, spoke up. His translator conveyed grudging respect. "You planned this from the beginning." Elena nodded. "The moment you sent that treaty. You see, humans have a saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. We came prepared for both. The question is, which do you choose?" The hall fell silent except for the hum of failing equipment and the distant sound of human ships maintaining their positions. The Alliance had sprung their trap perfectly. They just hadn't realized they were the mice, not the cats. Finally, Zarion floated forward on his damaged platform. The Seraphim had ruled the Alliance for centuries, but they were pragmatists above all else. "Very well, Commander Vasquez. Your terms are acceptable." Elena smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Excellent. Oh, and one more thing. This station will be jointly operated from now on. We're stationing a permanent human presence here. Consider it a cultural exchange." As the modified treaty was signed, Elena looked around at the damaged hall and injured delegates. The Alliance had learned an important lesson today. Humanity didn't need weapons to be dangerous. They were the weapons, forged in the fires of a death world and tempered by millennia of conflict. The war was over, but the message was clear. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage and they had come to stay. Anyone who tried to trap them would find themselves caught instead. Because humans didn't just survive traps, they turned them into opportunities. Later, as the Harmony departed Omega-7 with the signed treaty, and the Alliance fleet retreated to tend their wounds, Elena stood on the bridge with her team. They were battered, exhausted, but victorious. Park looked at the tactical display showing the human fleet escorting them home. "Did we just end a war with wine bottles and dress shoes, Commander?" Elena laughed, the first genuine laugh she'd had in 5 years. "No, Colonel. We ended a war by being human. The wine bottles and shoes were just props." As they jumped to hyperspace, heading home to Earth with news of peace, Elena thought about the future. The galaxy had learned today that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or firepower. It was the human ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome any obstacle. The Alliance had tried to trap humanity. Instead, they had freed them to take their place among the stars. And that, Elena thought with satisfaction, was the best trap of all. The one where everyone wins even if they don't realize it yet. The treaty would be remembered in galactic history not as the day humanity was trapped, but as the day they proved they belonged. With or without weapons, humans were here to stay.